Dear students of Ukrainian-American University, so welcome for the lecture of world economy, and I hope that we have the chance to share some interesting points on this aspect. So sorry that we can't do that as an online session, so we would have not the chance to have an intensive discussion, but I have also prepared some questions which you can answer by yourself, perhaps. So I'll share my screen now and will lead you through my presentation. So usually we would have the chance to do a voting or a survey. Here the question would be, will globalization continue in the future or not? But I prepared therefore some questions concerning that aspect. My program for that lecture is, first, we will have a look on the situation in Europe in September, October, and also some in November. Second chapter, the European initiative as an answer to China's One Belt Road. Third would be world economy at the edge of the new blocks, West against East. And at least we'll talk about some challenges besides politics. But let's start with the first one, the situation in Europe in fall 2022. Here, that's concerning the first process of globalization or deglobalization. So here are some figures, representative figures showing the development from the year 2000 up to 2021. You see that GDP increased usually from 50 trillion in 2000 up to 96 in 2021. But will that process go on because of globalization? Or will we have, because of some problems we can talk about, have a deglobalization? So my questions concerning this aspect. First question, does the increase of GDP mean really a higher welfare? And then you have to think about, what does that mean, welfare? Is GDP measuring welfare? My second question, we are facing really problems of supply chains, of the COVID-19, of new developments of nationalism, and so on. For sure, also higher energy prices. Will therefore be a trend to deglobalization? And my third question, what should be the strategy for the companies? Should they now produce only in their home country or in the low-cost country or as a target country? What can be or should be a good strategy? A very short answer on the last question by my side. And you might stop the video here if you want not to hear it before you have thought about. If, for example, the US is your target market, in that case, a very big target market, then it would make sense to produce in that target market. So that means to produce in the United States. You have avoid the transportation cost. You might have avoided also duties. And sometimes for Americans, it is important to have an American product. So several positive aspects. For a smaller target country, or it makes perhaps not the same sense. So you have to think about on the different influencing factors for your product, and based on that, to look where you have or you should produce, where you should have your production. Coming to the next slide. Here I'm focusing on the German situation, but it is a problem for the countries in Europe, not only Germany. Because of our politics, we have really focused on gas. And you see that in comparison between 2010, the light blue, with the dark blue in 2019. So private households, mostly heating with gas. And we increased that. In terms of electricity or mineral oil, we have an opposite development. The only other one is renewable energy, perhaps also district heating. So we are really depending, therefore, on gas, and now we have to look on the new situation because of the war and the Russian policy. One reason for that is high prices. So in August, we have seen the peak at more than 340 euro cents per megawatt hour. Now you see on that chart also that it came down a little bit the last weeks. Here are the prices for electricity. And what we see here are really high prices for electricity, higher than ever before. And because we produce electricity very often using coal or gas, and both are with high prices. And this production is setting the price because these are the marginal costs. You might have heard an aspect in microeconomics. So the marginal cost of the last producer, the highest price, is the price setting for the whole market. Now, the question is, do we have producers who have some advantages of it, who will have some so-called windfall profits? So, for example, what can be that? Here, in particularly, renewable energy is gaining out of that situation. Politicians discuss now, shall we tax these windfall profits? And now think about, we want to have more renewable energies, and now we have a tax on it. another aspect. Here you see the share of industry of the economy. So Poland, for example, here in that chart has the highest one at around about 27%, Germany a little bit more than 23, Italy at 20. But we have also a country which is really below that. Look at France, for example, at 13% only. Now, my question here is, what is the effect for the economy, for example, in comparison between Germany and France, or Poland and France? Industry needs the main part of energy. So, because now of the high prices of energy, Poland, Germany, and also Italy is more suffering on it than, for example, Spain or France, because we have to have a higher, or we have a higher burden because of high energy prices. Here another chart, and you see some more countries with their share of industry. For example, let's have a look here on Norway, but also Austria. So these countries are suffering more, perhaps not Norway, because Norway has the chance to have the own gas, the own energy. They have gas, they have also energy produced by water and so on. Next. In summer, we have seen really high freight costs for transportation. For example, here, the rates for the transport from China to Europe. Container, a 20-foot container cost more than 4,400 US dollars. And you have to bear the cost if you want to sell products here in Europe. But now, the youngest figures are at only a little bit more than 1,000. The next chart shows a similar development. And you see also the source you can have a look on. So the peak here was really in summer and came down by November, and now only at a level of, let's say, around about 25% compared to the summer only 4, 5, 6 months ago. And we will have a pressure, and an additional pressure, because the ordered container ships are really at a at a very high level of 6.7 million 20-foot containers. And the share of the world fleet, the ordered production is at 27%. So we will have really more and more ships for transportation of containers. And because of that, new container ships, we will have a pressure on freight cost. Let's come to another topic. German inflation rate. And I will show you not only Germany, but also another European country. We have seen in October or in fall 2020, not an inflation, but a deflation, minus. Came up a little bit and higher prices of around about 4%. Not very critical. But now you see here in the middle, that had been the minus in the fall 2020, and such an increase of inflation the last month, up to a little bit more than 10%. Here is some explanation why we have these high inflation rates. And I will give you some time, or you will stop the video here for reading. But I can tell you, heating or energy is one of the most influencing factors. And here, UK, and you see a similar development for the United Kingdom. And you know that UK is not anymore a member of the European Union, and also does not have the euro, but the British pound. But similar situation. And also here, similar reason. And now we had a new government, and the idea of this new government was cutting taxes in a volume of 45 billion British pounds to finance subsidies and consumers because of these high energy prices. To have no limits anymore for bonuses for the bankers in the city, and to finance a trade deficit of 8% of GDP. And the expectation or the idea of the government was it will be really financed automatically by a recovery of the economy. With a higher GDP, you can finance that because you have higher tax income and so on. Market does not trust in that policy. Here are two charts representing the exchange rate between US dollars and British pounds. A longer term on the left hand and a short term on the right hand. And you see the decline of the value of British pound. So market does not trust. Therefore, the finance minister Kwasi Kwarteng stepped down. Next was Minister of Interior, and that leads to the drama with Liz Truss. So she stepped down as a prime minister after only 44 days, because no one was confident to give the economy a push in that way. Yes, we have the idea. UK is now with a new government, with a different policy, and we'll see if they will have a success. Here, United States. Also in the United States, we have a high inflation rate, and the Fed is fighting against with higher interest rates. And that is reflected also by that chart here. You see the US Treasury securities at a 1-year constant maturity. But you see, coming from a level of nearly 0, going up to 5% now. And that is the situation now in the US. But in the United States, we are not afraid of a recession. They have a really strong economy at the moment, so really fighting against inflation is the policy of the Fed, and she's doing that by using higher interest rates. Looking here to Germany and Europe, first, Euro area GDP annual growth rates are really not high. And also we have seen a recession because of COVID in 2020. A little bit of a recovery, going up to around about 4%. Germany is in the last months not as successful as Europe. So our growth rates are below the European average at 1.4, the last one. And if you do that in comparison quarter by quarter, you see the last months are really coming down to zero, and might be, and that is what all the institutes and policies expecting, that we will have a recession in the first quarters of 2023. Additionally, we came down with our trade surplus, in particular because of higher prices for energy. But there are some others, and you might have the chance here to read. Perhaps you will stop the video again here to think about. But you see the blue part of the chart, that's the term in goods trade balance. So to see here now the government debt or public debt in Europe and also in the euro area. So the threshold is at 60%. So the whole public debt should not be higher than 60% of the GDP. But you see here, there are some countries on the left hand with a higher rate. Greece, Italy, Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, Cyprus. Yes, for sure, there are some countries on the right hand below that threshold. What is the problem? Perhaps not Greece. That is not the biggest economy in Europe, but Italy has a really big economy in Europe, third or fourth largest. So that might be a problem at the end if they have not the chance to finance. And you have seen perhaps that we will have higher interest rates. Problem here, threshold at 60%. Germany is around about a little bit higher than 60%, but not as a huge problem. But you see here, Italy. And Italy elected a new government with right-wing parties. Reaction of the market was increase of the so-called spread or difference between German and Italian 10 years government bonds. So the difference to finance is more than 2%. So Italy has to pay 2% more than Germany for their public government bonds. On the right hand, you see the absolute public debt of Italy and the share of the GDP at 150%. So if they will come to some problems that will have an influence on the whole European Union, and particularly the euro. Therefore, we have to look what can be the policy of the ECB. So on the one hand, we have seen that there is a trend to a recession. Fighting against a recession, you should lower interest rate. But on the other hand, we have seen the really high inflation rates at around about 10%. To fight against high inflation rate, you have to increase your interest rates. So there is a dilemma now for the ECB. Should they lower or increase interest rates? So at the moment, they decided to increase interest rates to fight against inflation. But they have to be careful not to have a real sharp increase of interest rates and to be, really with a careful development. Therefore, you can have a look on the interview with Isabel Schnabel, member of the ECB Executive Board. The link is here on that slide. And it said they raised the interest rates, the last one at 0.75. So that had been the first part of the lecture. I will stop the video here. You will have then the chance to look for the next video. And in the next video, I will talk about European initiative as an answer to China's One Belt Road. The students of Ukrainian-American Concordia University. So we'll continue with the world economy, the part 2 or chapter 2. And it's concerning the European Union and China on the other side. And I share my screen to present you some slides. Hope you will see them just now. So I'm talking now about the European initiative as an answer to China's One Belt Road. To start with, I'll start with the initiative of China, so-called Belt and Road Initiative. And that is now happening since, let's say, 2013, investing in nearly 70 countries all over the world. And here are some examples. And you see that it's not only concerning Asia, for example, here Pakistan or Bangladesh, but also Nigeria, Egypt, or others. Why is that interesting? And I will show you that on one of the next slides. Volume is also interesting. It's in billions of US dollar, but not without any problem. So perhaps you have heard of Sri Lanka. And we have to talk about the model of this initiative of China. So they will invest in infrastructure, but the countries have to pay for the construction, but who's doing the job? And the job is done by Chinese companies. And in Sri Lanka was the case that Sri Lanka was not able to pay back or to pay the interest of the debt. And that initiated some demonstration, so that after these, the government resigned, and and that is not a good situation for a country. And we see that also in Bangladesh or Pakistan. Why do they do Nigeria? And here you will see some examples of this initiative. So you see, for sure, the old Silk Road between China and Central Europe is relatively strong here. But not to forget, in that chart here, in that graphic, you see also African countries. And why is China doing that? So they want to have access to commodities. And that is showing the same aspect again here. So you see most of the countries in Africa are also included in that initiative, but also some South American countries. And in that case, or in these cases, South America and Africa, it's mostly concerning access to commodities. Because of the problems in the countries, in the target countries where the infrastructure is built up, because of these problems, the European Union has another initiative. It's called Global Gateway, and with a capital of 300 billion euros. And we want to boost sustainable links around the world. And European Union wants to compete with China. We have to see if it's possible, if this initiative is more convincing the target countries. So the Global Gateway initiative has therefore also some principles or values. And we want to support these values or principles. It means democratic values, good governance, equal partnership, green and clean or sustainable development, security focused, and that's very important, catalyzing private sector investment. And all these should lead to a better situation in the target countries. That means that they are able to develop their own economy and not depending on the case of China, on the country who is building up this strategy. So far, for that part, I will stop the video here, and you have the chance then to follow in the next video the chapter 3, and that is then concerning world economy at the edge of new blocks, West against East. One step back, you have here, sorry for skipping this slide. These are the priorities where EU wants to invest money, but with the principles I had been talking about. So many thanks for your attention. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you. So dear students, coming to the next chapter of world economics, And I'm sharing this screen again. So it's concerning the possible new blocks, West against East. If you like to look for the trade between countries, or let's say the ex and import figures of one country, you can do that by using that link here. But I will skip these two slides because we are not interactive here just at the moment. So we go on with the trend to West-East. So that's a chart from the German Trade and Investment Initiative. They're talking about these different parts here. Neue Seidenstraße means that's the Belt and Road Initiative or Three Ocean Initiative here. But you see that is connecting these continents. But to go ahead, we have to focus on supply chains. You remember perhaps my comments in the first part. Solution. What can be a solution? Might it be friend shoring? Not only low cost shoring. And so the EU Commission is looking for agreements with, and here it's called like-minded partners. What's one example? Chile or Australia. And if you look for others here, Japan, South Korea, Australia, for example. So these countries are, from the European point of view, very important because there you will find seldom earths or other commodities which are important also for the so-called wind turbines or windmills and others, in particular for the sustainable producing energy. As you see here, cobalt, lithium, nickel, and others. So the solution from EU Commission is to look more for friend shoring. That means for, in that case, called like-minded partners, which are sharing more or less the same principles. So one of these results also is the Trade and Technology Council, or TTC, between the European Union and the United States. So after the failing of the new trade agreement in years 2018, 2019, we are now looking for a new partnership here called Trade and Technology Council. It's not a comprehensive agreement, but it's useful in a closer correlation or cooperation between the two, United States and the European Union. So that's one of the aims, to get closer between these two. And you might know that China says that we have only one China and not the state of Taiwan. So that's the interpretation of mainland China. We are not sure what the Chinese politicians will do, but one important thing we can see just now, that is that Taiwan is really the most relevant producer for semiconductors. So you see here, manufacturing 77% of the world market, or contract manufacturing more than the half of it, test packing also more than the half of the world market share. So therefore, if there is any dispute or might be attack of China against Taiwan that will really influence our economy, it might be that we are not able to produce certain products as cars, automobiles, or others. Another astonishing thing in that case is that FDI of Taiwan in mainland China is really a huge amount. So here you see nearly 200 billion US dollars. And if you look for Germany, Germany invested only, it's also a big amount, but not the same as Taiwan, only investing 60 billion US dollars. So going one step ahead, we've also to look for the country risk of Taiwan. Taiwan is one of the high-ranked countries. You see here a double A plus of Standard & Poor's, or Moody's AA3, Fitch AA, and that's only a few grades, or let's say nearly the same as Germany or the United States, a few grades less than these two countries. But what will be happen if we want to decouple our relation between, in that part, Germany and China, because we are not following the same principles. China is perhaps willing to attack Taiwan or whatever. And therefore, we have to decouple our relation to China and strengthen cooperation in between the European Union or with the UK, with the USA, with Canada or Australia. What will be the effect? And there are some institutes who calculated these price of unbundling or decoupling. In a case of a global trade war, there would be a minus of GDP growth of 0.8 for Germany, the whole European Union a little bit less, and for China itself, more than 2% less of GDP growth. And perhaps that is one of the aspects that the politicians in China are not willing to attack Taiwan. If we really strengthen the alliance, there can be a similar result if you look for that 0.6, 0.4, 1.5. But all in all, the results are in the same direction. So, and here I will go ahead with the chapter 4, challenges besides politics. Here are some rates of infection per 100,000 inhabitants per age group. These have been in the months of September, October, but you see really high figures. And that's a community of Worms where our university is located. So we did not overcome the COVID-19, and we have to look for vaccination, for other instruments to not to have it as a pandemic anymore, but only as an endemic. What have we seen also is a new military cooperation between Australia, UK, and the USA. Therefore, it's called AUKUS. These are the first letters of the 3 countries. And you see here one submarine in the port of Perth in Australia. And also we are increasing, all these countries, and including Germany, are increasing military spendings because of the youngest developments in the war in your home country, in Ukraine. We have also to look for renewable energies in some figures. So at the moment we have renewable energy as a share of around about 40%. Heating, cooling, nearly 17%. Traffic, vehicles, nearly 7%. So we have to look for a higher share of renewable energy. And here that's only electricity sector. And we have to make more efforts to install more of renewable energy. That might be wind turbines or other energy, or what else. And then look for the Rhine River here at Cologne in this summer. Really only less water in the river, so that it was not possible to have the ships on the river really full loaded, or in one part you can't cross the river, can't transport on the river. And that was really a problem of climate change, perhaps. And you see that here in other parts of Europe, here in France. And that is one reason why the nuclear power stations in France had to shut down, because they are not able to cool with the water of the rivers. And that's continuing just now. And there is a loss of energy in France. And we have here a network across Europe, so that at the moment France is importing electricity power, for example, from Central Europe or from Germany. So also these factors are influencing our economy at the moment, and hope that you gain some knowledge about that. And